The message from my best friend arrived at 8:12 on a bright Tuesday morning, just as the sun was pouring through my kitchen window and turning the whole room gold. I remember staring at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hand, my heartbeat slowly climbing into my throat. The words were simple, but they carried a strange weight that made my chest tighten instantly. My best friend had written only a short sentence, but it felt like a quiet storm had slipped into my ordinary day. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for advice. He didn't even explain what had happened. He only wrote that he needed one night. Just one night. Please. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small human gestures that change lives, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel Touch of Kindness. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest acts of care become the biggest turning points in someone's life. His name was Arman, and for 15 years he had been the kind of friend people dream about but rarely find. We met in college when neither of us had much more than ambition and cheap backpacks. Arman was the loud one, the optimistic one, the guy who believed the world would eventually reward good intentions. I was quieter, more cautious, the type who saved receipts and worried about things long before they happened. But somehow our differences made us brothers. Years passed. Life pulled us in different directions, as it tends to do. I became a school librarian in a quiet neighborhood, living in a small apartment above a bakery that filled the air with the smell of warm bread every morning. Arman chased bigger dreams. He worked in event management, traveling between cities, organizing corporate conferences and weddings. His life was louder, faster, brighter. But through everything, we stayed close. That was why the message scared me. Because Arman was not the kind of person who asked for help. When I called him, the phone rang longer than usual before he answered. His voice sounded different from the confident, energetic tone I knew so well. It was quieter, thinner somehow, like someone who had been carrying too much weight for too long. He explained slowly that things had collapsed faster than he expected. A business deal had gone wrong. A partner had disappeared with money. His apartment lease had ended. His savings were gone. He tried to laugh it off the way he always did, but the humor felt forced. All he needed, he said, was one night to figure things out. Just one night. The strange part was that it was still early morning. The city outside my window was fully awake, cars moving through sunlit streets, vendors setting up fruit stands, schoolchildren laughing on the sidewalks. The world looked perfectly normal. But suddenly my best friend's life was unraveling somewhere inside that same daylight. I left work early that day. The walk back to my apartment felt longer than usual, my thoughts bouncing between memories and worries. I kept remembering the countless times Arman had been there for me. The night my father was in the hospital and I didn't know how to stay calm. The afternoon my old car died on the highway and he drove 2 hours just to help tow it back. He had never hesitated for me. So I unlocked my door, cleaned the spare room, and waited. Around midday the sun was high and bright when I finally saw him walking down the street toward my building. For a moment I almost didn't recognize him. His shoulders looked heavier, his steps slower. The confident energy he once carried like a shield seemed cracked. Still, when he saw me standing by the entrance, he forced a small smile. It was the kind of smile people use when they don't want the world to see how tired they really are. Inside the apartment, daylight streamed through the windows, illuminating every corner. I remember thinking how strange it was that such a bright afternoon could hold such a heavy moment. Arman sat at the kitchen table and stared at his hands for a long time. He eventually explained more of what had happened. The partner he trusted had drained their shared accounts. Contracts collapsed overnight. Bills piled up quickly. Pride kept him from asking others for help. Until he finally ran out of options. He told me he hated asking for even a single night. But sometimes life corners people in ways they never expected. I listened quietly, realizing how fragile success can be. One month someone appears unstoppable, and the next they are standing in a friend's kitchen trying to hide the fear in their eyes. That afternoon we walked through the neighborhood together. The sun was warm, the sidewalks busy, and children were playing in the park nearby. The ordinary rhythm of daytime life felt strangely comforting. We bought tea from a small street stall and sat on a wooden bench under a tree. Arman watched people passing by as if trying to remember how normal life worked. And slowly, the tension in his shoulders began to soften. Something about simple daylight conversations can make problems feel less permanent. We talked about old college memories, about the ridiculous part-time jobs we once had, about the professor who nearly failed us both because we submitted a project 3 minutes late. For the first time that day, Arman laughed a real laugh. It wasn't loud like before. But it was real. By late afternoon we returned to the apartment. Sunlight filled the spare room where he would stay. The room wasn't fancy. Just a simple bed, a small desk, and a window overlooking the street. But when he stepped inside, he looked around as if he had just been handed something far bigger than a place to sleep. Sometimes safety is the greatest gift someone can receive. As evening approached, the city slowly softened into quieter rhythms. But the most important thing had already happened during the day. The storm inside my friend had begun to calm. He started planning again. He opened his laptop, wrote messages to old contacts, updated his resume, and searched for opportunities he had ignored before. The same determination that once built his career began returning piece by piece. And I realized something powerful. He hadn't just needed a place for the night. He needed a moment where someone believed he could stand again. Morning arrived quickly the next day, sunlight flooding the apartment even brighter than the day before. I was already making breakfast when Arman walked into the kitchen looking different. Not fully healed. But stronger. His eyes carried something I hadn't seen since his message the previous morning. Hope. Over coffee he explained that 3 different people had already replied to his messages. One of them offered temporary project work. Another suggested a short-term collaboration. Nothing was certain yet, but doors had started opening again. All because he had a safe place to pause long enough to start knocking. Before leaving, he stood by the door for a moment, looking back at the small apartment as if memorizing it. Not because it was special. But because it had been there when he needed it most. Years have passed since that morning, but I still think about that message sometimes. How close pride came to keeping my friend silent. How one simple request almost stayed unsent. And how something as small as one night changed everything. Today Arman runs a modest but stable business helping small organizations plan community events. It isn't the flashy career he once chased, but it brings him something he values more now. Peace. And whenever we talk about that time, he always says the same thing in a softer voice than the confident one he once had. He says that sometimes people don't need miracles. They just need someone willing to open a door. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness for more stories that remind us how powerful compassion can be. And before we end, I have a special request for you. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe even a single act of support can change someone's entire future. Because somewhere right now, someone is probably staring at their phone, wondering if they should send a message asking for help. And sometimes the difference between despair and hope is simply knowing that someone will answer. Red Heart.